The city glittered like it was trying too hard to impress him. From the floor-to-ceiling glass walls of his penthouse, the skyline stretched endlessly. Skyscrapers piercing the night sky, headlights weaving through traffic like restless veins, neon signs blinking with the promise of life, excitement, and success. But to Ethan Cole, it all felt distant, muted, almost unreal. He stood barefoot on polished marble floors, a glass of aged whiskey in his hand, untouched for the past 20 minutes. The amber liquid reflected the city lights, flickering softly, but he didn't notice. His reflection stared back at him through the glass. Sharp suit, perfect posture, clean haircut, the face that had been featured on magazine covers, business journals, and top 30 under 35 lists. A man people admired, a man people envied, a man people wanted something from. Ethan exhaled slowly and looked away. "Is this really it?" he murmured under his breath. Behind him, soft instrumental music played through hidden speakers, carefully curated, like everything else in his life. Even silence in his home had been designed. There was no clutter, no mess, no imperfection, just like him, just like the life he had built. Earlier that evening, he had attended yet another charity gala, an event that was meant to symbolize generosity, compassion, and human connection. Instead, it had been a performance. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, bathing the ballroom in golden light. Women in expensive gowns glided across the floor, their laughter light and calculated. Men in tailored suits shook hands, exchanged business cards, and smiled with eyes that rarely matched their expressions. Ethan had arrived late as usual, and just like always, the room shifted when he entered. Ethan Cole. The whispers followed him like a shadow. There he is, the youngest billionaire in the room. I heard he just closed another deal worth. Do you think he's single? Of course they thought that. He always was, not for lack of options, but because none of them ever felt real. A woman approached him almost immediately, tall, elegant, confident. Her dress shimmered under the lights, and her smile was practiced to perfection. "Mr. Cole," she said smoothly, extending her hand. "I've been hoping to meet you." Ethan shook her hand politely. "Ethan is fine. I'm Vanessa. Nice to meet you, Vanessa." Her eyes lingered on him just a second too long, measuring, calculating, assessing. He knew that look. He had seen it hundreds of times. "What can I gain from you? What brings you here tonight?" she asked. He almost laughed. "What brings anyone here?" he replied. She tilted her head, amused. "To make a difference." "No," Ethan said quietly. "To be seen making a difference." For a brief moment, her smile faltered. Then it returned, stronger than before. "You're honest," she said. "That's rare." "So I've been told." They talked for a while about business, travel, investments, and vague philosophies about life. She laughed at the right moments. She touched his arm lightly when she spoke. She leaned in just enough to suggest interest without seeming desperate. It was a perfect interaction. Too perfect. And that was the problem. Because Ethan felt nothing. No spark. No curiosity. No connection. Just familiarity. Predictability. Emptiness. At one point, she said, "You must have an incredible life." Ethan looked around the room, the glitter, the wealth, the endless display of success. Then he looked back at her. "It depends on how you define incredible." By the time the event ended, Ethan was exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. The drive back to his penthouse was silent. His driver knew better than to speak unless spoken to. The city passed by in a blur of lights and motion, but Ethan barely registered any of it. His mind was elsewhere, or perhaps nowhere at all. When he finally stepped into his home, the stillness greeted him like an old companion. No laughter, no voices, no warmth, just space. Too much space. He loosened his tie and walked slowly toward the window, pouring himself a drink without looking. This had been his life for years. Success after success, deal after deal, milestone after milestone. And yet, there was always this feeling, this quiet, persistent emptiness that no amount of money seemed to fill. Ethan hadn't always been this way. There was a time, long before the headlines and billion-dollar valuations, when life felt simpler, more honest. He remembered being younger, sitting in a cramped apartment with his father, who worked long hours but always made time to talk. "Money is important," his father had once told him, "but don't ever let it be the only thing you understand." At the time, Ethan had nodded, eager, determined to succeed. And he had succeeded, beyond anything either of them could have imagined. But somewhere along the way he had lost something, or maybe he had never found it. His phone buzzed on the table behind him. Ethan didn't turn around immediately. It buzzed again, and again. Reluctantly, he walked over and picked it up. Missed calls, messages, emails, all variations of the same thing: business updates, meeting requests, urgent decisions that needed his approval. His assistant had sent a message. "Sir, the board needs confirmation on tomorrow's meeting. It's important." Everything was always important, except the things that actually mattered. Ethan stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned it off. For once, he didn't want to respond. For once, he didn't want to be needed. He walked back to the window and sat down, the city stretching endlessly before him. Somewhere out there, people were living real lives. Messy lives, unpredictable lives, lives filled with struggle, yes, but also with genuine moments. Real laughter, real connection, real love. Things money couldn't manufacture, things he couldn't buy, things he wasn't even sure he understood anymore. "Do you even know what love feels like?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. He frowned slightly. When was the last time he had been in love? Not interested, not entertained, not distracted, but truly, deeply in love. He tried to remember. Faces came to mind, beautiful, impressive, intelligent women. But none of them stayed long enough in his thoughts to matter. Because deep down he had always known. They weren't there for him. Not really. They were there for the life he represented. The doors he could open. The status he carried. And maybe, in their own way, they believed it was love. But Ethan knew better. Because love shouldn't feel like a negotiation. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. For a moment he imagined a different life. A simpler one. Where no one knew his name. Where he wasn't followed by expectations. Where conversations didn't come with hidden agendas. Where someone could look at him and see. Just him. Not Ethan Cole. Not the billionaire. Just a man. The idea felt strange. Almost impossible. And yet, it was the first thing in a long time that felt appealing. Ethan opened his eyes slowly. His gaze sharpened. Something shifted. The thought, a dangerous one. What if he stepped away? Not forever, but long enough to experience something real. To see how people treated him when there was nothing to gain. To find out if love, real love, was even possible for someone like him. It sounded crazy, irresponsible, unnecessary. His board would panic. The media would speculate. His entire empire depended on his presence. But for the first time in years, Ethan didn't care. Because what was the point of building an empire if you felt alone at the top of it? He stood up slowly, his mind racing now. The idea was growing, taking shape, becoming something more than just a passing thought. He walked to his wardrobe and opened it. Rows of expensive suits stared back at him, perfectly arranged, untouched by imperfection. He ran his fingers along the fabric, then paused. "This isn't me," he said quietly. Or maybe it never had been. His heart began to beat faster. Not from fear, from something else. Something unfamiliar. Excitement, possibility, freedom. For once, he wasn't thinking about profits, risks, or outcomes. He was thinking about living, really living. Ethan grabbed his phone again. This time, he opened a different contact. Someone he trusted. Someone who could make things happen without asking too many questions. The line rang once, twice, then, "Mr. Cole, I need your help," Ethan said. There was a pause. "With what, sir?" Ethan looked out at the city one last time. At the life he had built. At the version of himself everyone knew. Then he spoke. I want to disappear. Silence filled the line. I'm sorry, sir? Not permanently, Ethan clarified. Just long enough. For what purpose? Ethan smiled faintly. To find out who I am. When I have nothing. Another pause. Then carefully. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Ethan's eyes drifted to his reflection once more. But this time he didn't see the billionaire. He saw a man who was about to change everything. I'm going to become someone no one notices, he said. Someone ordinary. What kind of someone? Ethan didn't hesitate. A bricklayer. Outside, the city continued to shine. Unaware. Unchanged. But inside that penthouse, everything had already begun to shift. And Ethan Cole, the man who had everything, was finally ready to risk it all, for something money could never buy. The first thing Ethan noticed was the silence. Not the kind that filled his penthouse, controlled, curated, almost artificial. This silence was different. It was raw, uneven, alive. It came with distant voices, barking dogs, clanking metal, laughter from unseen corners, and the occasional blaring of a passing motorcycle. It wasn't peaceful, but it was real. Ethan stood in the middle of his new room and slowly turned in a circle. If his old life had been defined by excess, this one was defined by absence. The room was small, uncomfortably small. A single mattress lay on the floor, covered with a thin sheet that had clearly seen better days. A plastic chair leaned awkwardly against the wall. There was a narrow wooden table with one uneven leg, and a tiny window that barely let in enough light. No air conditioning, no polished marble floors, no automated lighting, no luxury, just space. Bare, honest space. Ethan exhaled, adjusting the cheap t-shirt clinging to his body. The fabric felt rough against his skin, nothing like the soft, tailored clothes he was used to. This is it, he murmured. For the first time since making his decision, doubt crept in. What exactly had he done? 2 days earlier, everything had begun to change. His trusted associate, Mr. Daniels, had handled the arrangements discreetly, just as Ethan expected. A new identity. No public records connecting him to Ethan Cole. A modest rental in a working-class neighborhood. And most importantly, a job. You understand what you're asking for, sir? Daniels had said, his tone cautious but respectful. I do. This won't be comfortable. I'm not looking for comfort. Daniels studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. Now, standing in that small room, Ethan felt the weight of his choice settling onto his shoulders. There was no turning back, not without admitting defeat. And something inside him refused to do that. He dropped his small bag onto the mattress and sat down. The springs beneath it creaked loudly in protest. Ethan let out a short laugh. Incredible, he muttered. A billionaire, sitting on a mattress that could barely hold his weight. If anyone from his old life could see him now, they wouldn't believe it. But that was the point. No one here knew who he was. No one cared. And for the first time in years, that felt strangely liberating. The next morning came early. Too early. Ethan woke to the sound of loud knocking. Hey, you coming or not? The voice was rough, impatient. Ethan blinked, disoriented for a moment before remembering where he was. Right? The new life. He stood up quickly, wincing as his back protested the unfamiliar mattress. His body already felt different. Stiffer, heavier, less pampered. I'm coming, he called. He splashed water on his face from a small bucket, changed into the worn work clothes provided to him, and stepped outside. The sunlight hit him immediately, bright, unforgiving. Waiting outside was a man in his late 40s, dark-skinned, stocky, with arms that looked like they had been carved from stone. You Ethan? The man asked, eyeing him up and down. Ethan nodded. Yes. The man snorted. You don't look like someone who's done this kind of work before. Ethan smiled slightly. Everyone starts somewhere. The man studied him for a moment longer, then shrugged. Name's Musa. I'm the site supervisor. Try not to slow everyone down. I'll do my best. Musa chuckled. We'll see about that. The construction site was chaos. Organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Men moved back and forth carrying heavy loads. Cement mixers churned loudly. The sharp clang of metal against metal echoed through the air. Dust floated everywhere, clinging to skin, clothes, and lungs. Ethan stood still for a moment, taking it all in. This was nothing like boardrooms and business deals. This was physical, immediate, demanding. "Don't just stand there," Musa barked. "Move!" Ethan snapped out of his thoughts and followed him. He was handed a stack of bricks. "Carry these over there," Musa instructed, pointing to a partially built wall. Ethan reached down and picked them up. The weight surprised him. He adjusted his grip, trying not to show it. "Problem?" Musa asked. "No." "Good. Move." The first hour felt like 5. The sun was relentless, beating down on him without mercy. Sweat soaked through his clothes within minutes. His hands, soft from years of minimal physical strain, quickly began to ache. By the second hour, the ache turned into pain. By the third, it was unbearable. Ethan's arms trembled as he lifted another set of bricks. His breathing grew heavier. His muscles burned in ways he had never experienced before. "Hey, new guy!" Ethan looked up. One of the workers, a younger man with a mischievous grin, was watching him. "You sure you don't want to run back to wherever you came from?" A few others laughed. Ethan forced a smile. "I'll survive." The man raised an eyebrow. "We'll see." By midday, Ethan was exhausted. Completely, utterly exhausted. He sat on a low concrete block during the break, his chest rising and falling rapidly as he tried to catch his breath. His hands were already blistering. His back ached. His entire body felt like it was rebelling against him. Musa walked over, handing him a sachet of water. "Drink," he said. Ethan accepted it gratefully. "Thank you." Musa watched him for a moment. "You're not used to this." "No," Ethan admitted. "Then why do it?" Ethan paused. What could he say? That he was a billionaire playing dress-up? That he was searching for something money couldn't buy? Instead, he shrugged. "I needed a change." Musa nodded slowly, as if that was answer enough. "Just don't quit halfway," he said. "We've seen your type before." "My type? People looking for adventure," Musa replied. "They don't last." Ethan met his gaze. "I'm not here for adventure." Musa held his eyes for a moment longer, then gave a small nod. "Good." The afternoon was worse. Fatigue settled into Ethan's bones, making every movement heavier than the last. The sun didn't let up. The work didn't slow down. At one point, he nearly dropped a stack of bricks. "Careful!" someone shouted. Ethan steadied himself, breathing hard. This was harder than anything he had ever done. Harder than building a company. Harder than closing billion-dollar deals. Because this demanded everything from his body. And his body wasn't ready. By the time the day ended, Ethan could barely stand. He walked back to his room slowly, each step deliberate. His clothes were covered in dust. His skin was sticky with sweat. His hands, he looked down. Blisters had formed across his palms, raw and painful. He let out a quiet laugh. "So this is what real work feels like." There was no bitterness in his voice, only realization. Back in his room, he sat on the mattress again, his body screaming in protest. For a long time, he didn't move. He just sat there, feeling, thinking, processing. Today had stripped something away from him. Not his wealth, not his identity, but his illusion. The illusion that life was meant to be comfortable. The illusion that effort could always be outsourced. The illusion that he understood what it meant to truly work. He didn't. Not until now. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since morning. Slowly, he stood up again and stepped outside. The street was more alive now. People moving about, vendors calling out, children playing, life unfolding in its rawest form. And that's when he saw it. A small roadside food stand. Simple, unremarkable, but something about it drew his attention. Maybe it was the smell of freshly cooked food. Maybe it was the soft glow of a lantern hanging above it. Or maybe it was her. A young woman stood behind the stand, serving food with calm efficiency. She wasn't trying to attract attention. She wasn't loud or flashy, but there was something about her presence. Something steady, something genuine. Ethan found himself walking toward her without thinking. "How much?" he asked. She didn't look up immediately as she served another customer. 500 naira, she replied simply. No change in tone. No curiosity. No special treatment. Just normal. Ethan blinked slightly. That was new. Very new. When she finally looked at him, her eyes were clear, direct, and completely uninterested in anything beyond the transaction. "Rice or beans?" she asked. Ethan hesitated for half a second. "Rice." She nodded and began serving his plate. Efficient, focused, unaffected. Ethan watched her closely, and for the first time since stepping into this new life, he felt something shift. He didn't know her name yet. He didn't know her story. But one thing was already clear. She saw him exactly as he appeared. Nothing more, nothing less. Just a tired bricklayer, looking for a meal after a long day. And strangely, that was the most honest thing he had experienced in years. Ethan took the plate from her and sat nearby, eating slowly. The food was simple, but it tasted better than most of the meals he had eaten in five-star restaurants. Because this time, there were no expectations attached, no image to maintain, no role to play. As the night deepened and the sounds of the street softened, Ethan leaned back slightly, watching the world around him. For the first time in a long time, he felt present. Not powerful, not admired, not important, just present. And as his eyes drifted back to the young woman at the food stand, one quiet thought settled in his mind. Maybe, just maybe, this was where everything would begin. The next morning, Ethan woke up before the knocking came. Not because he wanted to, but because his body refused to let him sleep any longer. Pain greeted him before his thoughts did. It settled deep in his muscles, his arms, his back, his legs. Every inch of him sore in a way that felt both foreign and undeniable. He groaned softly as he sat up. "So this is day 2, he muttered. The thin mattress had done nothing to help. If anything, it had made things worse. His body, used to luxury, was now learning the hard language of discomfort. And yet, there was something grounding about it. Something honest. No shortcuts, no privileges, just effort and consequence. By the time he stepped outside, the early morning air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant cooking fires. The neighborhood was already awake. People sweeping their compounds, children running errands, voices calling out across narrow streets. Life didn't wait here. It moved. Constantly. Ethan adjusted his worn shirt and began walking toward the construction site, his steps slower than the day before. He noticed more things now. The uneven roads, the laughter between neighbors, the way people greeted each other, brief, casual, real. No one looked at him twice. No one whispered. No one cared. And for reasons he still didn't fully understand, that made him feel lighter. The sight was just as loud, just as demanding. But today Ethan was prepared. Or at least, he thought he was. "Ah, you came back," Musa said, raising an eyebrow as Ethan approached. "I said I would." Musa grunted. "We'll see how long that lasts." The others laughed again. Ethan didn't take it personally this time. Instead, he picked up his load without being told and got to work. Hours passed. The pain didn't disappear, but it became familiar. His movements were still clumsy, still slower than the others, but there was a rhythm beginning to form. Lift, carry, place, repeat. Sweat soaked through his shirt once again. Dust clung to his skin, and his hands, already blistered, grew more tender with each passing hour. But something had changed. Yesterday he had been overwhelmed. Today, he was adapting. "Not bad," the young worker from before said, walking beside him. Ethan glanced at him. "That almost sounds like a compliment." The man grinned. "Don't get used to it. You're still slow." Ethan chuckled. "I'll take what I can get." The man extended his hand briefly. "Name's Tund." "Ethan." Tun shook his hand, then winced slightly. Your hands. They're already gone. Ethan looked down at his palms. The blisters had worsened, some broken, some still swelling. I'll manage. Tun shook his head. You say that now. By midday, the sun was unforgiving again. The break came like a blessing. Ethan sat down, breathing heavily, his shirt sticking to his body. This time he didn't feel like collapsing. Just tired. Deeply tired. But alive. Musa tossed him another sachet of water. You're still here, he said. Ethan caught it. I told you. Musa studied him again. There was something different in his gaze this time. Less doubt. More curiosity. He said, then walked away. When the day finally ended, Ethan didn't rush home. He didn't even think about his room, because his mind had already settled on something else. Or rather, someone else. The roadside food stand. As he approached, the familiar scent reached him first, rich, warm, inviting. Cut through the dust and exhaustion, pulling him forward. And there she was again, standing behind the small wooden table, arranging plates with the same quiet focus as the night before. Unbothered, unhurried, unimpressed by the world. Ethan slowed his steps. For a brief moment, he just watched her. The way she moved, the way she handled each customer. No unnecessary smiles, no forced charm, just calm efficiency. It was refreshing. When it was his turn, he stepped forward. How much? He asked, even though he already knew. She didn't look up immediately. 500 naira. Same tone. Same simplicity. Ethan almost smiled. Rice again. Now she looked at him. Just briefly. Just enough to recognize him. Then she nodded. You came yesterday. It wasn't a question. Just an observation. Yes. She scooped the rice onto the plate. No beans today? She asked. Ethan blinked slightly. You remember that? She shrugged lightly. You were the only one who asked before choosing. Ethan let out a soft breath. That was unexpected. Rice is fine, he said. She handed him the plate. No lingering glance. No curiosity beyond what was necessary. And just like that, she moved on to the next customer. Ethan stood there for a moment longer than he should have, then quietly stepped aside and sat down. As he ate, his eyes drifted back to her again. He didn't understand it. Why her? Why this simple, quiet woman running a roadside stand? Why did she stand out in a way that no one in his world ever had? Maybe it was because she didn't care. Not about appearances. Not about status. Not about impressing anyone. She wasn't trying to be seen. And somehow, that made her impossible to ignore. Over the next few days, a routine formed. Work, exhaustion, and then, her. Each evening, Ethan returned to the food stand. Each evening, their interactions remained simple. How much? 500. Rice. Yes. But small things began to shift. Subtle things. One evening, as she handed him his plate, she said, You're improving. Ethan looked up, surprised. At what? Carrying bricks, she replied. He raised an eyebrow. You've been watching? She shrugged again. Hard not to. You struggle less now. Ethan chuckled softly. That's one way to put it. She didn't laugh. But there was the faintest hint of something in her eyes. Not amusement. Not interest. Just acknowledgement. Another day, he arrived later than usual. Most of the food was already gone. She looked up as he approached. You're late. I had more work. She paused, then glanced at the remaining pot. There's not much left. That's okay. She hesitated for a brief second, then served him a slightly larger portion than what remained would normally allow. Ethan noticed. You didn't have to do that. I know, she said simply. And that was it. No explanation. No performance. Days turned into a week, and something quiet began to grow. Not love, not yet, but familiarity, comfort, a rhythm that felt natural without effort. One evening, as he sat eating, she spoke again. You don't talk much. Ethan looked up. Neither do you. That's different, she replied. How? "This is my work," she said, gesturing around. "You're just here." Ethan smiled slightly. "Maybe I like being just here." She studied him for a moment, as if trying to figure something out. "You're not like the others," she said. His heart skipped, just slightly. "How so?" "They complain," she said. "You don't." "That doesn't mean I don't feel it." "Maybe," she replied, "but you carry it differently." Ethan leaned back slightly, his curiosity deepening. "What about you?" he asked. "You're always calm." She gave a small, almost distant smile. "Calm doesn't mean easy." That answer lingered, heavy, meaningful, but she didn't elaborate, and somehow Ethan knew better than to push. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't trying to control the conversation. He wasn't trying to impress. He wasn't trying to be anything other than what he appeared to be. And strangely, that felt like the most honest version of himself he had ever known. That night, as he walked back to his small room, something inside him felt different. Lighter. Not because his life had become easier. It hadn't. If anything, it was harder than ever. But because, for the first time, he felt seen. Not for his wealth. Not for his power. Not for his name. But for something quieter. Something simpler. And she didn't even realize it. Back at his room, Ethan sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at his hands. The blisters, the roughness, the proof of effort. He flexed his fingers slowly. Pain shot through them, but he didn't mind, because now, there was something waiting for him at the end of each day. Not luxury, not status, not expectation, just a quiet food stand, and a girl who didn't notice him. Ethan leaned back, a faint smile forming on his lips. "This might actually work," he whispered. Outside, the night carried on as usual, unaware, unchanged. But for Ethan, everything was beginning to shift, and without realizing it, he was already looking forward to tomorrow. By the second week, Ethan no longer counted the days. At first, everything had felt like an experiment, something temporary, something controlled. He had told himself this was just a phase, a way to observe life from a different perspective. But now, it didn't feel like observation anymore. It felt like living. The construction site was still brutal. The sun still burned. The bricks still felt heavy. And his hands, though tougher now, still carried the scars of his early days. But something had changed. Ethan had found a rhythm, not just in the work, but in the life that followed it. Every evening, without fail, he found himself walking the same path. Past the noisy roadside vendors. Past the children chasing each other barefoot on dusty streets. Past the old man who always sat outside his shop, watching the world like he had seen it all before. And then, he arrived. Amara's stand. That evening, as Ethan approached, he noticed something different. She looked tired. Not in a way that demanded attention. Not in a way that sought sympathy. But in the quiet, subtle way that only someone paying close attention would notice. Her movements were slightly slower. Her usual steadiness, just a little strained. Ethan stepped forward. "How much?" he asked, as always. 500 naira, she replied, as always. But her voice lacked its usual firmness. He tilted his head slightly. "Long day." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she served his plate in silence. Ethan waited, not impatiently, just present. Finally, she spoke. "Every day is a long day." Ethan gave a small nod. "I suppose that's true." She handed him the plate. Their fingers brushed, just briefly. It was nothing, a simple accident. But for some reason, it lingered. Ethan sat down as usual, but this time he didn't start eating right away. Instead, he watched her. Not in an obvious way. Not enough to make her uncomfortable. But enough to notice the small details. The way she pressed her lips together slightly between customers. The way she stretched her fingers when she thought no one was looking. The way she exhaled quietly after serving each plate. She was exhausted, but she didn't stop. After a few minutes, Ethan stood up and walked back to the stand. She looked at him, confused. "Is there a problem?" "No," he said. "But you should sit for a minute." She blinked. Sit. Yes. She let out a small, incredulous breath. And who will serve the customers? Ethan gestured lightly. I can help. She stared at him. You? Yes. You don't even know what you're doing. Ethan smiled faintly. I can learn. For a moment she didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at him as if trying to figure out whether he was serious or just being foolish. Then, without warning, she handed him the spoon. Don't give too much, she said, or I'll lose money. Ethan took it carefully. Yes, ma'am. The first customer approached. Ethan straightened slightly. How much? The man asked. Ethan hesitated for half a second. Then, 500 naira. The man nodded. Rice and beans. Ethan turned to Amara instinctively. She gestured toward the pots. He followed her instructions, scooping carefully, trying not to spill. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. For the next few minutes, something unexpected happened. Ethan Cole, the billionaire who once managed companies and negotiated deals worth millions, stood behind a small roadside food stand, serving rice and beans. And strangely, he enjoyed it. Amara watched him from the side. At first, her expression was skeptical, then curious, then something softer. You're giving too much stew, she said at one point. Ethan glanced down. Really? Yes. Reduce it. Yes, boss. She almost smiled. When the small rush of customers passed, Ethan handed the spoon back to her. Your business is safe, he said. She took it, shaking her head slightly. You're strange. I've been told. There was a brief silence between them, but this time, it wasn't empty. It was comfortable. Why did you help? She asked suddenly. Ethan shrugged. You looked like you needed it. I didn't ask. You didn't have to. She studied him again. Longer this time. Deeper. As if trying to peel back a layer he hadn't shown anyone else. You don't act like a bricklayer, she said. Ethan's heart skipped. Just slightly. What does a bricklayer act like? Not like you. He smiled lightly. Maybe I'm just different. Maybe, she replied. But her tone said something else. Maybe you're hiding something. Ethan changed the subject. What made you start this? He asked, gesturing to the stand. Amara paused. For the first time since he had met her, she hesitated. Not because she didn't have an answer, but because the answer meant something. Life, she said finally. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That's not very specific. She let out a quiet breath. Life doesn't give you time to plan everything, she continued. Sometimes, you just find yourself somewhere, and you either move forward, or you get stuck. Ethan listened carefully. There was weight in her words. Experience. Truth. So you chose to move forward, he said. She nodded. I didn't have much of a choice. What do you mean? She looked away briefly, then back at him. My mother used to run this stand. Ethan's expression softened. Used to. She passed away, Amara said simply. No drama. No display. Just fact. I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly. She gave a small nod. After that, everything fell on me. Ethan didn't interrupt. Didn't try to fix it. He just listened. I didn't know how to do it at first, she continued. I made mistakes. Lost money. Almost gave up. But you didn't. She shook her head. No. Because if I stopped, there was nothing else. Ethan leaned slightly forward. And now, she looked around her small setup. The pots, the plates, the worn wooden table. It's not perfect, she said, but it's mine. Those words hit him harder than he expected. Because despite everything he owned, Ethan wasn't sure he had ever felt that way. Not truly. What about you? She asked suddenly. Ethan froze. What about me? Why are you here? The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. He hesitated. Just for a moment. I needed a change, he said. She frowned slightly. That's it. For now. She didn't push, but she didn't fully accept it either. He could see it in her eyes. The curiosity, the quiet suspicion, the sense that there was more beneath the surface. Everyone has a story, she said. Ethan met her gaze. Maybe I'm still figuring mine out. Another silence. But again, it wasn't uncomfortable. A breeze passed through, carrying the scent of food and dust and something faintly sweet from a nearby stall. The world moved around them. People passed. Voices rose and fell. But in that small space, time felt slower. You're not what I expected, Amara said softly. Ethan tilted his head. What did you expect? She considered that, then shrugged. Nothing. Ethan laughed lightly. That's fair. The sky had begun to darken now. The lantern above her stand flickered to life, casting a warm glow over everything. Ethan glanced at it, then back at her. You should rest more, he said. She shook her head. Rest doesn't pay bills. No, he agreed. But it keeps you standing. She looked at him again. This time, there was something different in her expression. Not just curiosity, not just acknowledgement. Something softer, something warmer. Will you come tomorrow? She asked. The question was casual, almost offhand, but it carried something deeper. Ethan smiled. Yes. And for the first time, she smiled back. It wasn't wide. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. And somehow, that mattered more than anything he had seen in years. As Ethan walked back that night, the weight of the day didn't feel as heavy. His body still ached. His hands still hurt. His clothes were still covered in dust. But inside, something had shifted. This was no longer just about escaping his old life. It was about discovering something new, something honest, something he hadn't even realized he was missing. And at the center of it was her, Amara, the girl who didn't try to impress him, the girl who didn't care who he was, the girl who spoke in truths instead of performances. Ethan looked up at the night sky, a faint smile forming on his lips. Maybe this is what real feels like, he murmured. And somewhere behind him, under the soft glow of a lantern, Amara stood at her small food stand, thinking about him too, even if she didn't fully understand why. The sky had been warning them all day. By mid-morning, the heat felt different, heavier, thicker, like the air itself was holding its breath. Even the workers at the construction site noticed it. Rain is coming, Tun said, wiping sweat from his forehead as he dropped a stack of bricks. Ethan glanced up at the sky. The sun was still there, but clouds were gathering slowly, swallowing the blue in uneven patches. You say that like it's a bad thing, Ethan replied. Tund laughed. You'll understand soon. By noon, the wind had changed. It moved through the site in restless bursts, kicking up dust and tugging at loose materials. The usual rhythm of work felt slightly off, less steady, more urgent. Musa clapped his hands loudly. Let's move faster. We don't want to be here when it starts. Ethan worked harder, not because he was afraid of the rain, but because something else had settled in his mind. Amara. For the past few days, their conversations had grown easier, longer, less guarded. She still didn't talk much, but when she did, her words carried weight. And Ethan had found himself looking forward to those moments more than anything else in his day. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't overwhelming. But it was real, and that made it powerful. By late afternoon, the sky had darkened completely. The sun disappeared behind thick, heavy clouds. A low rumble of thunder rolled across the distance. The workers began to pack up faster. Go, 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 Musa shouted. We're done for today. Ethan wiped his hands on his trousers, breathing hard. Then, the first drop fell. It was light at first, soft, almost gentle. But within seconds, the sky opened. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, soaking everything instantly. The ground turned slick. Dust turned to mud. Voices rose as workers scrambled for cover. Ethan stood still for half a second, letting the rain hit his face. Cold, sharp, alive. Then he moved, but not toward his room, toward her. The streets were chaotic. People ran in all directions, trying to shield themselves with bags, clothes, anything they could find. Vendors rushed to cover their goods. Some packed up quickly. Others abandoned things entirely. The rain didn't care. Came down harder. Relentless. Ethan pushed through it, his clothes already drenched, his vision blurred by the downpour. His heart beat faster, not from the run, but from something else. A sudden urgency, a need he didn't question. When he reached her stand, he stopped. Amara was still there. The wooden table was half covered with a plastic sheet that struggled against the wind. Pots were exposed. Water splashed onto the ground, creeping closer to everything she owned. And she was trying to hold it all together. Literally. One hand gripping the edge of the plastic covering, the other attempting to move items out of the rain. Her clothes were soaked. Her hair clung to her face. But she didn't stop. Amara! She turned sharply at the sound of his voice. For a moment, she just stared at him. Rain falling between them. "What are you doing here?" she shouted over the storm. Ethan stepped closer. "You need to leave." "And go where?" she shot back. "If I leave this, I lose everything." Another gust of wind hit. The plastic covering slipped. Water poured directly onto the table. Amara cursed under her breath and tried to fix it. Ethan didn't hesitate. He moved forward. "Stop," he said firmly. "You can't do this alone." "I'm not leaving." "I didn't say you should." For a split second, their eyes locked. Something passed between them. Not agreement. Not yet. But understanding. "Fine," she said quickly. "Then help me." That was all he needed. The next few minutes were chaos. But this time, they faced it together. "Lift that," she shouted. Ethan grabbed one of the pots, his grip slipping slightly from the rain. "Careful," she added. "I've got it." They moved quickly, carrying items from the table to a small sheltered space nearby. The rain made everything harder. The ground was slippery. The weight of the pots doubled with water. But neither of them slowed down. "Not that one first," she called. Ethan turned. "Why? It has less. Take the full one." "Got it." At one point, Ethan nearly lost his footing. Amara grabbed his arm instinctively. "Watch it." Their bodies collided slightly. For a brief moment, time paused. Rain poured around them, their faces inches apart, breathing heavy, eyes locked. Then, they pulled away, and kept moving. Finally, after what felt like forever, everything was under shelter. The rain still fell, hard, loud, but the immediate danger had passed. Amara leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Ethan stood beside her, his chest rising and falling just as fast. Neither of them spoke. For a moment, they just existed. "You're soaked," he said finally. She let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "So are you." Ethan ran a hand through his wet hair. "I told you to leave. And I told you I couldn't." He nodded slowly. "I understand now." She glanced at him, something softer in her eyes. "Do you?" Ethan leaned back against the wall. "For you, this isn't just a stand," he said. "It's everything." She didn't respond immediately, but she didn't look away either. "Yes," she said quietly. "It is." The rain softened slightly, not stopping, but easing. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, without distraction, without distance. "You didn't have to come," she said after a while. He shrugged lightly. "I know." "Then why did you?" There it was. The question. Simple, direct, but heavy with meaning. Ethan hesitated, just for a moment, because the truth wasn't something he could fully explain. "I couldn't just sit somewhere and do nothing," he said. "That's not an answer." He met her gaze. "It is," he said softly. "Just not the full one." She studied him again. Longer this time. Deeper. "You're strange," she repeated. Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm starting to accept that." Silence settled between them again. But this time, it was different. The storm had stripped something away. The distance. The formality. The quiet barriers they didn't even realize were there. Now, it was just them. Amara slid down slightly, sitting on the low edge of the shelter. Ethan followed, sitting beside her. Close, but not too close. For a while they just watched the rain. The way it hit the ground. The way it softened the world around them. The way it turned everything into something quieter. "I used to love the rain," Amara said suddenly. Ethan glanced at her. "Used to?" She nodded. "When I was younger, my mother and I would sit outside and just watch it," she said. "We didn't have much, but moments like that felt like enough." Ethan listened carefully. "After she died," Amara continued, her voice softer now, "rain just became another problem." Ethan didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it. He just sat there, present. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She nodded, but this time, there was something else in her expression. Not just sadness, but trust. "What about you?" she asked. Ethan tensed slightly. "My life is different," he said. "That's not an answer either." He let out a small breath. "You're not going to let me avoid it, are you?" She shook her head. Ethan looked out at the rain again, then back at her. "I've had everything I could ever need," he said slowly. She frowned slightly. "Then why are you here?" There it was, the question he couldn't fully answer. Not without breaking everything. "I told you," he said. "I needed a change." She studied him again, and this time, she didn't push. "Okay," she said simply, but her eyes said something else. "I don't fully believe you, but I'll let you speak when you're ready." The rain softened even more, now just a steady fall. Gentler. Amara reached beside her and picked up a small container. "There's still some food left," she said. "Do you want some?" Ethan smiled. "Always." She handed him a plate. Their fingers brushed again. This time, neither of them pulled away immediately. Then slowly, they did. They ate in silence. But it wasn't empty. It was full. Full of everything they hadn't said. Everything they were beginning to feel. Everything they didn't yet understand. "You're different," Amara said after a while. Ethan looked at her. "How?" "You listen," she said. "Most people don't." He smiled slightly. "Maybe I've spent too much time being heard." She tilted her head. "What does that mean?" Ethan paused, then shook his head lightly. "Nothing important." She didn't argue, but something had changed. The rain had brought them closer. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in something quieter, stronger. A connection built not on appearances, not on status, not on expectations, but on moments. Shared, honest, unfiltered. As the rain finally began to fade, Ethan stood up slowly. "I should go," he said. Amara nodded, but neither of them moved right away. "Thank you," she said finally. Ethan looked at her. "For what?" "For not leaving," she said. He smiled softly. "I told you I wouldn't." She held his gaze, and this time, she didn't look away first. "See you tomorrow?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes." Ethan turned and stepped out into the damp evening. The world felt different now. Quieter, clearer. Behind him, Amara watched him leave. Her expression unreadable, but her heart not as guarded as before. And somewhere between the rain and the silence that followed, something undeniable had begun. A love built on truth. Almost. The morning after the rain felt different. The air was cooler, washed clean by the storm. The usual dust that lingered in the streets had settled, leaving behind a damp stillness that softened everything. But inside Ethan, there was no calm. He woke earlier than usual, staring up at the ceiling of his small room. Sleep had come, but not deeply. His mind had replayed the night over and over again. The rain, the chaos, the way Amara had looked at him when he showed up. The way she said thank you. The way she didn't look away. Ethan exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face. "This is getting complicated," he muttered, because it was. What had started as an experiment was no longer just that. Somewhere between the bricks, the dust, and the quiet evenings at her stand, he had crossed a line, and he wasn't sure how to go back. He sat up, wincing slightly as his muscles protested. The pain was familiar now, expected, but today it felt distant, overshadowed by something else. A quiet tension, like something unseen was approaching. By the time he got to the construction site, the usual noise greeted him, but it didn't feel the same. Something was off. Tund noticed it first. "You look like you didn't sleep," he said, dropping a bag of cement beside Ethan. "I slept," Ethan replied. "Not well." Ethan gave a faint smile. "You're very observant." Tund shrugged. "You're very obvious." Ethan picked up a stack of bricks, trying to focus. Lift, carry, place. But his mind kept drifting. Back to Amara. Back to her questions. Back to the things he hadn't said. "You're distracted." Musa's voice cut in sharply. Ethan turned. "I'm working." "Not well," Musa replied. "Your head is somewhere else." Ethan paused, just for a second, then nodded. "You're right." Musa studied him. Then, surprisingly, his tone softened slightly. "Whatever it is, leave it outside this place," he said. "Here you focus, or you get hurt." Ethan met his gaze. Understood. And he meant it, because Musa wasn't wrong. This wasn't a boardroom where distraction could be hidden behind words. Here, one mistake had consequences. Real ones. Ethan forced himself to focus. And for a while, it worked. The rhythm returned. The weight of the bricks grounded him. The repetition cleared his thoughts. The noise drowned out everything else. Until a sound broke through. Not loud, not sudden, but different. An engine. Smooth, powerful, out of place. Ethan froze, just for a fraction of a second. But it was enough. He turned slowly, and saw it. A black SUV. Sleek, polished, impossible to ignore. It didn't belong here. Not on this rough, dusty road. Not among workers covered in sweat and cement. The entire site seemed to pause. Not completely, but enough for eyes to shift. Curiosity rising. The SUV came to a slow stop near the entrance. The engine cut off. The door opened. Ethan's chest tightened, because he already knew. A man stepped out. Tall, well-dressed, precise in his movements. Mr. Daniels. Ethan's assistant. His right hand. The one person who knew everything. "Sir." The word echoed in Ethan's mind before it was even spoken aloud. Tund nudged him lightly. "Hey, that one looks like money," he said under his breath. Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't, because Daniels was already walking toward him. Each step measured, each movement controlled. And suddenly, Ethan wasn't just Ethan the bricklayer anymore. He was being pulled back. "Ethan." The voice was calm, respectful, but firm. Too firm. Ethan exhaled slowly, then stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said quietly to Musa. Musa frowned slightly. "You know him?" Ethan hesitated. Then, "Yes." Musa's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Ethan walked toward Daniels, each step heavier than the last. When they were finally face to face, Daniels didn't speak immediately. He just looked at him. And in that look, there was everything. Shock, disapproval, relief, and something else. Urgency. "You've been difficult to reach," Daniels said finally. Ethan gave a faint smile. "That was intentional." Daniels didn't smile back. "Sir, we need to talk." The word "sir" landed like a stone. Ethan glanced around quickly. Some of the workers were watching now, trying not to be obvious, but failing. "Not here," Ethan said quietly. Daniels nodded once. "Then where?" Ethan gestured slightly toward a quieter area behind the site. "Come." They walked in silence. Each step felt like a countdown. When they were far enough from the others, Ethan turned. "What is it?" Daniels didn't hesitate. "You've been gone for weeks." "I know. The board is asking questions. They always ask questions. This is different." Ethan's expression hardened slightly. "How?" Daniels stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your absence has become public." Silence. Ethan blinked once. "What?" "News broke this morning," Daniels continued. "Ethan Cole has not been seen in weeks. There are speculations." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "That wasn't supposed to happen." "No," Daniels agreed. "It wasn't. A heavy pause settled between them. "What are they saying?" Ethan asked. Daniels hesitated. Then, "Some think you've stepped down quietly. Others believe there's internal conflict. And a few—" Ethan narrowed his eyes. "A few what?" "They think something happened to you." Ethan let out a short breath. "Incredible." Daniels didn't react. "This is serious, sir," he said. "Your company is already feeling the pressure. Investors are nervous. The board is unstable." Ethan looked away, back toward the site, back toward the life he had chosen. "I told you I needed time," he said. "And I gave it to you," Daniels replied. "But time is running out." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm not done yet." Daniels studied him carefully. "With respect. This is no longer about what you want." Ethan's eyes snapped back to him. "Everything I built is about what I wanted. And now it's about what you're responsible for," Daniels said calmly. The words hit harder than Ethan expected. Responsibility. That old weight. That old life. "I'll come back," Ethan said. "Just not yet." Daniels was silent for a moment. Then, "Is it because of her?" Ethan froze. The question landed too precisely. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Daniels raised an eyebrow slightly. "You've been seen. Repeatedly. Same place. Same time." Ethan didn't respond, because denying it would be pointless. Daniels sighed quietly. "Sir, this was meant to be temporary. It still is." "Then why are you hesitating?" Ethan didn't answer. Because the truth was no longer simple. Before, this had been about finding something real. Now, he had found it, and walking away from it didn't feel as easy as he thought it would. Daniels watched him closely, then said something softer. "You've changed." Ethan let out a quiet breath. "Maybe." Daniels nodded slightly. "But the world you left hasn't." That was the problem. A voice called from the distance. "Ethan." They both turned. Amara stood at the edge of the road, holding something in her hand, probably food. She had come earlier than usual, but now, she wasn't looking at Ethan. She was looking at Daniels. The suit, the car, the difference. Confusion crossed her face. Ethan's chest tightened. "This isn't good," he murmured. Daniels followed his gaze. "That's her." Ethan didn't answer, because in that moment, everything he had been trying to keep separate was colliding. Amara took a slow step forward, then another. Her eyes shifted between them, trying to understand, trying to piece it together. And Ethan, for the first time since starting this, didn't know what to do. "Sir," Daniel said quietly, "you need to make a decision." Ethan didn't move, didn't speak, because no matter what he chose, something would break. And as Amara got closer, that moment, that truth, was no longer something he could avoid. It was here, and it was about to change everything. Amara didn't stop walking, even when something in her chest told her to, even when the scene in front of her didn't make sense, even when her instincts whispered, "Something is wrong." She kept moving. Ethan stood frozen. For the first time since she had known him, he didn't look steady. He didn't look calm. He didn't look like himself. And that was what scared her the most. Her eyes shifted between him and the man beside him. The contrast was impossible to ignore. One stood in worn, dusty clothes, hands rough, shoulders tired, face familiar. The other stood clean, polished, untouched by struggle. His presence sharp, controlled, deliberate. They didn't belong in the same world. And yet, they stood side by side. "Ethan?" Her voice was quieter than she expected. Not accusing, not angry, just searching. Ethan swallowed. "Amara." That was all he managed. She stepped closer, slowly, carefully, as if moving too fast might break whatever fragile truth was hanging between them. "I came earlier today," she said, lifting the small container in her hand slightly. "You didn't come to the stand, so I thought—" Her words faltered. Her eyes returned to the man in the suit. "Who is he?" she asked. Silence. Ethan's mind raced. This was the moment. The one he had avoided. The one he had delayed. The one he knew would come, but hoped wouldn't come like this. Amara, he started again. But Daniel spoke first. Sir, perhaps. Don't. Ethan cut in sharply. Daniel stopped. Amara's brows furrowed. Sir? She repeated. The word echoed in her mind. Out of place. Unfamiliar. Wrong. She looked back at Ethan, her eyes narrowing slightly. Why is he calling you that? Ethan exhaled slowly. His chest felt tight, heavy, like the truth itself had weight. Amara, there's something I need to tell you. Her expression shifted, subtly, but clearly. Then tell me, she said. No hesitation, no softness, just truth waiting. Ethan hesitated, and in that hesitation, something broke. Tell me, she repeated. He looked at her, really looked at her, at the girl who had shared her food with him, who had trusted him, who had seen him as something simple, something real. And suddenly, he realized just how much he had to lose. I didn't lie to you, he said carefully. Amara's eyes hardened. You didn't. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. Her voice was sharper now, not loud, but cutting. Ethan shook his head slightly. No, it's not. Then explain it to me, she said, gesturing between him and Daniels. Because right now, nothing makes sense. Daniels shifted slightly, clearly uncomfortable. But he said nothing. This wasn't his moment. This was Ethan's. Ethan took a slow breath. Then, my name is Ethan Cole. Silence. For a split second, Amara didn't react. Then, she laughed. Not softly, not nervously, but sharply. You expect me to believe that? She said. Ethan didn't smile, didn't argue, because this part, he expected. You've heard the name before, he said. Of course I have, she snapped. Everyone has. She stopped, her words catching. Her eyes flickered. He's a billionaire, she finished slowly. Ethan nodded. And you're telling me that you, she gestured at him, up and down, are that man? Yes. Another silence. This one heavier. Amara shook her head. No. Ethan reached into his pocket slowly, pulled out his phone, unlocked it. He scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward her. Look. She hesitated, then took the phone. At first, her expression was skeptical, dismissive, then changed. Her eyes scanned the screen. News articles, photos, interviews. Ethan, not in dusty clothes, not tired, not quiet, but polished, powerful, recognizable. The same face, the same eyes, the same man. Her grip on the phone tightened slightly. This? She whispered. Ethan said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. The truth was there, clear, unavoidable. Amara slowly lowered the phone and looked at him again. But this time, she wasn't seeing the man she knew. She was seeing everything he had hidden. You lied to me, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried something deeper than anger. Hurt. Ethan stepped forward slightly. I didn't. You did. She cut in. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. Not yet. You stood in front of me every day, she continued. You talked to me. You listened. You. Her voice faltered. You let me believe you were someone you're not. I am that person, Ethan said quickly. Everything you saw, everything we shared, that was real. Was it? She asked. The question hit harder than anything else. Or was it just part of your experiment? Ethan froze, because she wasn't entirely wrong, and that made it worse. I needed something real, he said, his voice softer now. I needed to know what it felt like to be seen without. Without money? She finished. He nodded. And you decided to use me for that? She asked. That's not what this was. Then what was it? She demanded. Ethan opened his mouth, then stopped. Because how do you explain something that started as an experiment, but became something else? I didn't plan for this, he said. That doesn't make it better, she replied. Her voice broke slightly now. That just means I was never part of the plan. Ethan's chest tightened. You are now, he said. Amara shook her head slowly. No, she said. Her voice was steadier now. Stronger. I was part of your lie. Silence fell. Even the sounds of the construction site seemed distant now. Muted. You think I would have treated you differently if I knew? She asked. Ethan didn't answer, because he didn't know. I wouldn't have, she said. That hurt, because he realized she was telling the truth. I just wanted something honest, he said quietly. And you thought deception would give you that? She replied. Ethan flinched slightly, because there it was. The truth he couldn't escape. Amara stepped back. Just one step, but it felt like distance. You should have told me, she said. I was going to. When? She asked. Ethan hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. Amara nodded slowly. That's what I thought. She looked down briefly, then back at him. Her eyes were filled now, not just with tears, but with something deeper. Disappointment. You know what hurts the most? She asked softly. Ethan couldn't speak. It's not that you're rich, she said. It's not that you're him. She gestured faintly toward the image still lingering in her mind. It's that I trusted you. Her voice broke, just slightly. And now I don't know what was real. It was all real, Ethan said quickly. She shook her head. No, she said, because once doubt enters, everything changes. I need you to stay away from me, she added. The words were quiet, but final. Ethan's heart dropped. Amara, please, she said. Not angry, not loud, just tired. And that was worse. Ethan stopped, because he saw it. Pushing now would only break things further. Amara turned and walked away, slowly, not running, not rushing, just leaving. And Ethan didn't follow, because for the first time since he had come into her life, he didn't know if he was allowed to. Daniels stepped forward quietly. I'm sorry, sir, he said. Ethan didn't respond. He just stood there, watching her disappear, and feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Lost, real, deep, unavoidable. The kind of loss money couldn't fix. The kind that didn't come with solutions or negotiations. The kind that just stayed. Ethan exhaled slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't think it would end like this. Daniels said nothing, because some things didn't need a response. And as the sun dipped lower in the sky, Ethan Cole stood between two worlds. The one he came from, and the one he had almost belonged to. And for the first time, he wasn't sure which one he had truly lost. The city welcomed Ethan back like nothing had changed. The same towering buildings, the same endless traffic, the same polished surfaces reflecting a life of success. From the outside, everything was exactly as it should be. But inside Ethan, nothing was. The black SUV moved smoothly through the streets, its tinted windows separating him from the world outside. Daniels sat across from him, reviewing messages, making calls, restoring order to the chaos Ethan had left behind. Your schedule has been adjusted, Daniels said. We've minimized public appearances for now, but the board insists on a meeting tomorrow morning. Ethan didn't respond. He was staring out the window, watching people move, watching life happen. He used to see this view as powerful. Now, felt distant. Sir. Ethan blinked slowly. Yes. The meeting, Daniels repeated. I heard you. Daniels hesitated. You'll attend. Ethan leaned back slightly. Yes, because what choice did he have? The car pulled into the driveway of his penthouse building. Security opened the gates instantly. Staff stood ready. Everything was precise, efficient, controlled. Ethan stepped out. The air felt different here. Cleaner, filtered, artificial. Welcome back, sir, one of the staff members said. Ethan gave a small nod. But the words didn't feel right. Welcome back. It didn't feel like he had returned. Felt like he had been pulled. Inside, the silence greeted him again. The same silence from before. Cold, Perfect. Empty. He walked slowly through the space. Everything was exactly as he had left it. Nothing out of place. Nothing changed. But he had changed. Ethan loosened his tie and moved toward the window. The same view, the same city, the same life, and yet felt smaller now. He poured himself a drink. Out of habit, not desire. He took a sip, paused, then set the glass down. It didn't taste the same, because now he knew what something real felt like. And this wasn't it. That night Ethan didn't sleep. He tried. He lay in his large, comfortable bed, the kind people dreamed of owning. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, Amara, standing in the rain, looking at him with trust. Then later, looking at him with hurt. "You lied to me." Her voice echoed in his mind. Over and over. Ethan turned onto his side, then onto his back, then sat up. "This was supposed to be simple," he muttered. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Because somewhere along the way, he had stopped pretending and started feeling. He got out of bed and walked to the window again. The city lights stretched endlessly, but they didn't comfort him. For the first time in years, Ethan felt restless. Not the kind of restlessness that came from ambition, but the kind that came from loss. Real loss. Meanwhile, across the city in a place far less polished, Amara sat on a wooden stool behind her food stand. The night was quiet, quieter than usual, not because the world had changed, but because she had. She stared at the pot in front of her, the food inside untouched. Customers had come. They had eaten. They had left. But she barely remembered any of it. Her movements had been automatic. Her responses mechanical, because her mind was somewhere else. Ethan Cole. The name didn't feel real, felt distant, like something from a different world. A world she had never belonged to. And yet, he had stood right in front of her. Every day, talking, laughing, listening, pretending. Amara tightened her grip on the edge of the table. "Why?" she whispered. The question hung in the air, unanswered. She replayed everything in her mind. Every conversation, every moment, every look. Was it all fake? No, that was the problem. It hadn't felt fake. That was what made it hurt. Because now, she didn't know what to believe. "You're different." She remembered saying that. And she had been right. Just not in the way she thought. A customer approached. "How much?" Amara blinked. 500 naira. Her voice sounded distant, even to herself. She served the plate, took the money, gave change. Routine. But something was missing. The quiet awareness she had grown used to. The feeling of someone watching, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that made her feel seen. She glanced up instinctively. He wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. And suddenly, the space felt emptier than it should. She looked away quickly, annoyed with herself. "Forget it," she muttered. But she couldn't, because no matter how much she tried to focus on the truth, her heart kept returning to the moments. The rain, the laughter, the way he listened, the way he showed up. "That wasn't fake," she whispered. But then, if it was real, why didn't he tell me? Silence. Because that question had no easy answer. Back at the penthouse, Ethan sat at his desk. Papers spread in front of him. Reports, numbers, decisions, the things that used to define his life. But tonight, they meant nothing. He picked up a document, read the first line, then put it down. His mind refused to stay here, kept drifting, back to her. "You should have told me." He closed his eyes. "I know," he said quietly. The regret sat heavy in his chest. Not because he had hidden his identity, but because he had waited too long to reveal it. Because now, felt like a lie, even if it hadn't started that way. Daniels knocked lightly and stepped in. "Sir, the board meeting is confirmed for 9 a.m. Ethan nodded. Daniels hesitated. Then, "If I may, you seem distracted." Ethan let out a short breath. "That obvious?" "Yes." Ethan leaned back in his chair. Have you ever made a decision that felt right at the time, but wrong later? He asked. Daniels considered that. Yes, he said, but usually because the situation changed. Ethan nodded slowly. That's exactly it. Daniels stepped closer. Then the question isn't whether the decision was wrong, he said. It's whether you're willing to fix it. Ethan looked at him. And if fixing it means risking everything? Daniels held his gaze. Then you have to decide what everything really is. Silence. Because for the first time, Ethan wasn't sure. Was it the company, the wealth, the empire he had built? Or was it her? Back at the food stand, Amara began packing up. Slower than usual. The night had gone by, but it didn't feel like it. She wiped down the table, arranged the containers, folded the cloth, everything in its place, everything controlled, except her thoughts. She paused, looked at the empty space where he used to sit, and for a moment, her expression softened, then hardened again. No, she said firmly, because no matter what she felt, she couldn't ignore the truth. He had lied, and trust, once broken, wasn't easy to rebuild. She picked up the last container and turned to leave. But something inside her whispered, what if he comes back? She stopped, just for a second, then shook her head. He won't, she said, because people like him didn't belong in her world. They visited, they observed, they left, and life went on, didn't it? Back in the penthouse, Ethan stood by the window once more. The city stretched endlessly before him. But now, he saw it differently, not as something he owned, but as something he didn't fully understand. He closed his eyes, and in the silence, one truth became impossible to ignore. He had found something real, and he had lost it, not because it wasn't meant to be, but because he hadn't handled it right. Ethan opened his eyes slowly. This isn't over, he said quietly. Not with certainty, not with confidence, but with something else. Hope, because some things, even when broken, could still be rebuilt, if you were willing to fight for them. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Cole was ready to fight for something that had nothing to do with money. Ethan didn't sleep, again. But this time it wasn't just regret keeping him awake. It was clarity. By the time the first light of morning filtered through the glass walls of his penthouse, Ethan was already dressed. Not in a suit, not in the image the world expected, but in something else. He stood in front of the mirror, staring at himself. The reflection looked unfamiliar. Simple shirt, worn trousers, no watch, no polish, no armor. For a moment he said nothing. Then quietly, this is who she knows. And this time, he wasn't going to hide behind anything else. Behind him, Daniels stood near the door, watching silently. You're sure about this? He asked. Ethan didn't look away from his reflection. No. Daniels raised an eyebrow. No. Ethan turned slightly. I'm not sure she'll listen. I'm not sure she'll forgive me. I'm not even sure I deserve it. He paused. Then, but I'm sure I can't walk away. Daniels studied him, then gave a small nod. Then go, he said. Ethan didn't waste another moment. The drive felt longer than usual, even though the distance hadn't changed. Every turn, every street, every familiar corner brought something back. The first day, the first meal, the rain, her voice, her laughter, her silence. By the time the car stopped, Ethan's chest felt tight. He stepped out before the driver could open the door. Wait here, he said. The driver nodded. Ethan stood still for a second, looking ahead. Nothing had changed. The same dusty road, the same scattered stalls, the same quiet life moving forward. But this time, he didn't feel like he belonged. And that was the difference. He walked slowly, not like before, not with ease, but with purpose. Each step carried weight. Because now, he knew what was at stake. When he reached the stand, she was there, Amara, standing behind the table, serving food, moving the same way she always did. But something was different. Her movements were quieter, her energy more guarded. as if a part of her had stepped back. Ethan stopped a few feet away. For a moment, he just watched her, because this might be the last time. Then he stepped forward. How much? The words felt heavier now. Loaded. Amara froze, just for a fraction of a second. Then, 500 naira. Same words, same tone, but not the same feeling. She didn't look at him. Not yet. Ethan swallowed. Amara. Now she looked up, and the distance in her eyes hit him immediately. What do you want? She asked. No softness, no warmth, just a question. Ethan nodded slightly. I understand why you're upset. That's not what I asked, she said. He took a breath. I came to talk. I'm working. I'll wait. She held his gaze, as if testing him. Then, suit yourself. And just like that, she went back to serving customers. Ethan stepped aside and waited. Minutes passed, then more. The world moved around them. People came, people left, but Ethan stayed, silent, still, watching. And slowly, something shifted. Not in her, in him, because for the first time, he understood what it meant to wait without control, to stay without knowing the outcome, to be present, without expectation. By the time the crowd thinned, the sun had begun to lower. Amara wiped her hands slowly. Then finally, she looked at him. You're still here. Ethan nodded. I said I would be. A pause. Then, talk. No invitation. No warmth. Just permission. Ethan stepped closer, but not too close. I was wrong, he said. She didn't react. I should have told you the truth earlier, he continued. Not when it was convenient. Not when I was ready. But when it mattered. Amara crossed her arms. And when was that? Ethan hesitated. From the beginning. A flicker. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. At least you're honest now, she said. Ethan nodded. I didn't lie about how I felt, he added. Amara looked away briefly. That doesn't change what you did. I know. Silence. Ethan stepped forward slightly. But everything else was real, he said. Every conversation, every moment, the rain, the way I showed up for you, that wasn't part of some plan. She looked back at him. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect anything, he said. I just need you to hear it. Another pause. The air between them felt heavy. Why me? She asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. Why did you choose me? She continued. Out of everyone. Why me? Ethan didn't hesitate this time. I didn't choose you, he said. She frowned. You didn't. He shook his head. I noticed you, he said, because you were the only person who didn't notice me. Amara blinked. You didn't try to impress me. You didn't treat me differently. You didn't care about anything except what was in front of you. He stepped closer. You were real, he said, and I didn't even realize how much I needed that. Until I found it. Her expression softened. Just slightly, but she held her ground. And instead of being honest, you lied. Ethan exhaled. Yes. No excuses. No defense. Just truth. Amara studied him. Long. Carefully. And now? She asked. Ethan's voice dropped. Now I'm here as the man you met, he said. Not the one the world knows. She shook her head. You can't separate the two. I'm not trying to, he said. I'm trying to show you that both are real. A quiet breeze passed between them. You hurt me, she said. I know. I trusted you. I know. And now you're asking me to do that again? Ethan paused. No, he said. Amara frowned slightly. No. I'm asking for a chance, he clarified. Not your trust. Not yet. Just a chance to earn it. Silence. Because that was different. Not a demand. Not an expectation. A request. If I lost everything tomorrow, Ethan continued slowly, the only thing I would want to keep is what we had. Amara's eyes flickered. Don't say things like that, she said quietly. Why? Because I don't know if they're true. Ethan nodded. That's fair. Another pause. Then, Ask me anything, he said. She hesitated, then looked at him. If you lost everything tomorrow, she said slowly, who would you be? The question settled between them. Heavy. Important. Ethan didn't rush his answer. He thought about it. Really thought about it. Then, the man who showed up in the rain, he said. Amara's breath caught slightly. The man who carried your pots, he continued. The man who sat here every evening. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He stepped closer. The man who chooses you, he said softly. Every time. Silence. Long. Deep. Amara looked at him. Not through him. Not past him. At him. Searching. For lies. For cracks. For anything that felt false. But this time, there was nothing hidden. Just truth. Raw. Unprotected. And that scared her. Because believing him again meant risking everything again. You make it sound easy, she said finally. It's not, he replied. Then why do it? Ethan didn't hesitate. Because losing you is harder. That landed. Not loudly, but deeply. Amara looked away. Her walls were still there. Still strong. But there was a crack now. Small. Fragile. But real. I don't forgive you, she said. I know. I'm still angry. I understand. And I don't trust you. Ethan nodded. That's fair. She looked back at him. But, she added slowly. Ethan's heart tightened. But, he repeated. Amara took a breath. I'll listen. And for now, that was enough. Ethan smiled. Not wide. Not triumphant. Just relieved. Because sometimes, the biggest step forward was simply not walking away. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the quiet street, two people stood at the edge of something fragile. Not fixed, not perfect, but not broken beyond repair. And for the first time since everything fell apart, there was hope again. Time didn't fix everything, but it softened the edges. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly, something fragile began to rebuild. Not all at once. Not in grand, sweeping gestures. But in small, consistent moments. Ethan didn't disappear again. That was the first difference. He showed up. Every day. Not always to talk. Not always to be noticed. But to be present. Sometimes he stood at the side of the food stand watching quietly. Sometimes he helped without asking. Carrying supplies. Fixing small things. Serving when the line got too long. And sometimes, he simply sat, eating, waiting, respecting the distance she still kept. Amara didn't push him away, but she didn't pull him closer either. She observed, carefully, because this time, she wasn't just listening to his words. She was watching his actions. Consistency, patience, honesty, things that couldn't be faked. Not for long. You're still here, she said one evening, wiping her hands on a cloth. Ethan looked up from where he sat. I said I would be. She nodded slowly. You don't get tired? He smiled slightly. I do. Then why keep coming? Ethan didn't answer immediately, because now, he didn't want to say the wrong thing. Because this matters, he said finally. Amara held his gaze, then looked away. But she didn't argue. And that was progress. The construction site changed too. Ethan kept working. Even after returning to his company, he split his days now. Mornings in boardrooms, afternoons under the sun. It was exhausting, but he didn't stop. Because somewhere along the way, work had stopped being about proving something, and started being about becoming something. Are you trying to kill yourself? Tund asked one afternoon, watching him lift another load of bricks. Ethan laughed lightly. Not intentionally. Tund shook his head. You leave, come back looking like money, then still carry bricks like this? Ethan adjusted his grip. It keeps me grounded. Tund frowned. You're a strange man. Ethan smiled. I've accepted that. Musa approached, arms crossed. You don't belong here, he said. Ethan met his gaze. I know. Then why stay? Ethan paused. Then, because I need to. Musa studied him for a long moment. then gave a small nod. Just don't slow us down. Ethan chuckled. I won't. Back at the stand, Amara noticed everything. The way he still struggled sometimes. The way he didn't try to stand out. The way he didn't use his wealth to impress her. He never offered to fix her life. Never tried to take control. And that mattered more than anything else. One evening, as they sat together after closing, she spoke. You could leave all this, she said. Ethan looked at her. What do you mean? This? She gestured around. The work, the stress, everything. Ethan leaned back slightly. I could, he admitted. Then why don't you? He smiled faintly. Because this is the only place I've ever felt real. Amara studied him. And before. I had everything, he said. But none of it felt like mine. She frowned slightly. How can something not feel like yours when it belongs to you? Ethan thought about that. Then, because I didn't earn all of it in a way that made me understand it, he said. But this? He glanced at his hands, still marked by work. This I understand. Amara followed his gaze. And now, Ethan looked back at her. Now I'm learning what actually matters. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't heavy. It was calm, comfortable. You've changed, she said softly. Ethan tilted his head. For better or worse? She hesitated. Then, for real. That meant more than anything else she could have said. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. Ethan didn't come. For the first time since everything had started to rebuild, he wasn't there. Amara noticed immediately. She tried not to, tried to focus on her work. But the absence was loud. Where is your friend? One of the regular customers asked casually. Amara didn't look up. He's not my friend. The man chuckled. If you say so. She didn't respond, but her eyes drifted to the road. Once, then again. By evening, he still hadn't come, and something unfamiliar crept into her chest. Worry. She frowned slightly. Why should I care? She muttered. But she did. Because this time, if he disappeared, it would mean something different. Night fell. She packed up slowly. Still no sign of him. And just as she turned to leave, Amara! She froze, turned, and there he was. But not like before. Not in dusty clothes. Not tired. Not quiet. Ethan stood there, in a suit, clean, polished, recognizable. The man from the articles. The man she had tried to forget. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, sorry I'm late, he said. Amara crossed her arms. You didn't come. I had something to finish. She raised an eyebrow. So now you remember that life? Ethan nodded. I never forgot it. Silence. Then, why are you here like this? She asked. Ethan took a step closer. Because this is part of me too, he said. And if we're going to move forward, you need to see all of it. Amara held his gaze. And what does moving forward mean to you? Ethan didn't hesitate. Not choosing between my worlds, he said. But building something that includes both. She frowned slightly. And where do I fit into that? Ethan smiled softly. Right beside me, he said. Not above. Not below. Beside. That mattered. A lot. Days later, Amara stood in front of a building. Not large. Not extravagant. But beautiful. Warm. Inviting. A small restaurant. Her name written across the sign. She turned slowly to Ethan. You didn't, she said. Ethan shook his head quickly. I didn't build this for you, he said. She frowned. Then what is this? A partnership, he replied. You planned it. You designed it. You chose everything. Her eyes widened slightly. And you? I supported it, he said. Not as someone above you, but as someone with you. Amara looked back at the building. Her dream. Not given. Built. Earned. Shared. You really mean it, she said softly. Ethan stepped closer. I told you, he said. No more lies. She turned to him fully now. And for the first time since everything had broken, she didn't hesitate. I was scared, she admitted. I know. I thought everything we had was fake. It wasn't. She searched his eyes. And this time, she believed him, not because of what he said, but because of everything he had done. Slowly, she stepped closer. No more secrets, she said. Ethan nodded. No more secrets. And then, she smiled. Not small, not hesitant, but fully. And Ethan realized something in that moment. This was what he had been searching for. Not perfection, not admiration, not status, but something simple, something real. Love, not built on wealth, not built on illusion, but built on truth, on patience, on choice. And as they stood there, side by side, in front of something they had created together, Ethan knew, for the first time in his life, he had everything that truly mattered. And this time, it wasn't something he could lose, because it wasn't built on what he had, but on who he had chosen to become. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel and tell us where you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.